Everybody. I just want to welcome everybody for participating in our Level Up series. We're glad that you took time out to try to level up for the year 2020. And once again, we just want to thank each and every one of you for participating.
Thank you very much, John. Jason, will you bring up the slide presentation for our panelists? I will then introduce both our panelists and our moderator for tonight. And our first panelist is Mr. Rodney Driver. Mr. Rodney Driver, MBA, PMP, CSM, CISM, wow, that's a lot of certifications, has over 17 years of experience as an information technology professional in various roles and industries. He earned his undergraduate degree from University of Mississippi in Management Information Systems and graduate degree from Bethel University in Business Administration. Currently, Mr. Driver is working as a manager of global projects for Bridgestone Americas Incorporated in Nashville, Tennessee. He volunteers his time with Habitat for Humanity and United Way. In his spare time, he enjoys playing basketball, golfing, and skiing.
Thank you.
Our next panelist is Miss Barbara Mason. Ms. Mason is the HR insider and owner of Career Pathways Consulting. She helps female professionals that are unhappy in their careers and are ready to move into careers that reinforce their personal values, strengths, and passions. She has 20 years of HR experience and has worked in 3 different industries, all Fortune 500 companies. She teaches others how to navigate their career to reach their career and life goals. Her goal for tonight is, her takeaway for tonight is how to learn early on how to understand culture quickly and effectively. Ms. Mason's contact information is also listed. It will be reposted within the chat box. Our next panelist is Mr. Chauncey McGlathery. While in New York, Chauncey defended the city of New York and its police and correction departments in civil rights cases under the Giuliani administration. While in Boston, Chauncey received additional leadership training from many institutions, including Harvard University, Tufts University, and the Interaction Institute. Most recently, he served as an adjunct professor in the African and African Diaspora Studies department at Boston College. He currently owns his own business, consulting practice based here in Madison County, specializing in the fields of organizational development, executive benefits, Medicare, and health and life insurance. He continues his work in the community by showing business leaders how to use the principles of faith in their everyday lives and business decisions. The audience takeaway for tonight is you can live well and work well by daily committing to turn your intentions into reality. Mr. McGlathery contact information is listed. It will also be listed within the chat function as well. Now, our moderator for tonight is Ms. Shaqueria Dow. She is 22 years old, recently graduated from the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, class of 2020. She was originally born and raised in Selma, Alabama, where she graduated from Southside High School in 2016. In high school, she had the pleasure of becoming a Howard Hughes Medical Institute, HMI, dual enrollment scholar, student at Wallace Community College in Selma, Alabama, and received her Associate of Science degree prior to graduating from high school. Shaqueria double majored in both interior design and studio art, with a special concentration in drawing, thus receiving her Bachelor of Science in Human Environmental Sciences. She had the opportunity to serve as a student art ambassador for UA's art department all 4 years of college, participate in numerous honors and academic societies, as well as being an active member of ASID, the American Society of Interior Designers, just to name a few. As of today, Shaqueria still resides in Tuscaloosa while working at her new job at Floor and Decor in Homewood, Alabama, as a full-time design consultant. Additionally, she is also interning part-time this fall with Kentuck Art Center in Northport, Alabama, as a special events and retail intern. Within the next year, she plans to get accepted into UA's Mendelsohn Graduate School of Business to obtain her master's degree in either one of the marketing, economics, or management programs. Looking forward with her career, Shaqueria aims to eventually work with a registered designer and or decorator to gain the experience and knowledge needed to take the NCIDQ exam to eventually become a licensed interior designer. She strongly anticipates opening her own interior design art firm one day with a huge focus in residential design. We will now move into the panel discussion portion of our event. I am passing the mic to you, Shaqueria.
Thank you so much, Rodney, for the introduction. I would like to take a time to start with the panelists and start asking general questions, and feel free to jump in. Feel free to give your honest opinion, or feel free to just, be yourself and just answer or ask any questions you may have along the way. So the first question I have today, and feel free to jump in or include anything. What is your definition of corporate culture in the workplace?
All right, I will kick us off. I didn't know if you were calling on us or not, but I will kick us off with corporate culture. And so how I try to relay it very simply is it's the language of your company. And so it's the way that your company behaves. How do they get things done? Is it a collaborative environment? Is it an individual environment? How do they dress? How do they show up? And so once you start to watch and observe the culture of the company, you begin to see how do things get done. So I just try to call it's the language of how your company moves and get things done.
Okay, great. Yeah, excellent response.
I like that, Ms. Mason. I probably would add that it differs company by company. Coming from someone that has worked at several companies, the company culture will be different. And I think that's up to the individual that is starting at that company to adapt and understand what that company's culture is to be successful there.
Agreed.
Anyone else? There's no wrong answers.
I'll jump in. I would just like to add that a lot of times, if you are operating in an organization that is large or decentralized, it may not be the creation of anyone inside the office currently what the culture is. Sometimes, if you're unaware of the structure of your organization, you can guess wrong as to where culture comes from. So it's important to understand where your office falls in the larger scheme of the entire organization, particularly to the extent that cultural issues come up. You want to be careful that you respect what has happened before you. And if your company, like the last one I worked for, is a Fortune 500 company and employs several thousand people, understand that that culture is a non-negotiable in most ways, even now, and in some cases, especially now.
Okay, great. I can definitely agree with that. I have one other question to ask going along with that one. Do you believe there's any negative corporate culture in the workplace?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, right now, it's tough, to be honest with you, with everything that's going on in the U.S. right now with just, you know, Black Lives Matter and everything that's going on there. You have, it's, I know for me, and I shared this, today was the first time that I've been in the office since March because of COVID. So it was refreshing going into the office, but at the same time, you know, from what I heard earlier this year with individuals that were in the office around the time of George Floyd's murder, it was tough. You know, there was a lot of apprehension between teammates not necessarily wanting to talk about that issue, but at the same time, the company is releasing statements to address it. So at the highest level, if your company is releasing statements, but you don't have individuals that want to discuss that, it's just very tough. And so with the culture, I mean, I think you have to adapt to be successful. And I share this, that really, you know, corporate America, to me, it's a game, and it's how well you play the game. It's how successful you're going to be. So that game is also understanding what the company culture will be. So then you can understand how to play that game daily to benefit yourself.
Thank you, Rodney. I completely agree with that. I feel, not trying to interrupt or anything, I'm just giving my personal experience with that. I remember when I worked at Panda Express right before we was getting into spring break, right before COVID happened and everything. That was right when the Black Lives Matter, when it first like jumped off really like very strongly with everything. And when I came back to work, I remember it was very awkward for the other colleagues who aren't African American to to comment on that situation and everything. So I definitely remember going to work and having to hear some of my coworkers talk about it, some of them keeping quiet, some of them giving their input, some of them just trying not to say the wrong thing. But again, it all comes to what will be the wrong thing to say at that point and everything. So I completely agree with that. Any other responses from the panel before I go to the next question? Okay. So for the next question, what are some things that can help prepare anyone, let's say targeting my generation, like first getting out of college? What would be a good tips or any advice that would help to get my first internship as a recent college graduate? Let's start with Barbara, Chauncey.
I would say networking. I will tell you, you come from a large university like myself, and when I was at the University of Mississippi, I probably did not network as much as I should have because I didn't understand the value of networking. And so now, since you are a recent graduate, I would say make sure to have a network that you can rely on, because that's how you will find out about opportunities and jobs. And also probably take advantage of LinkedIn, because a lot of your classmates will start to move on and have jobs, and they will post things out on LinkedIn about, you know, my company is hiring. And so you can find jobs that way.
The other thing that I would add to that is to have a really good brand online and have some good brand material. So what I mean by that is having an excellent resume that's quality and that speaks to what you can do. Also having a LinkedIn profile that is representative of the brand that you're trying to have. And then also wherever you are on social media, make sure that it aligns with what you're trying to portray. Employers look at your social media. And so I think that's one of the biggest things, especially for the younger generation, is to be cognizant of, because when I was 22, it wasn't that big of a deal. But now it's a really big deal because there's so many social media outlets. And even though it may be your personal page or your personal business, employers look at that and they draw conclusions based on what they see. So I would say, along with Rodney, I can't speak enough about networking. Networking is the class they should teach you in high school. It's the class that nobody ever gets, but it's so, so important. So those are the things that I would say.
I would just add to that mentorship. I think everybody, regardless of where you are in the workforce, coming in the middle of it, going out, everybody needs to always have a mentor. It's critical. I think it ties right in. Everybody's saying 3 different ways of saying the exact same thing. It's community. Great things come from community, and you're always asking to be a part of a new community. And one of the ways people see you as being a potential valuable candidate in a new community is because you've already been that in your previous community. Mm-hmm. So every relationship, every conversation, every interaction, every post is a reminder, a reflection of who you are. And the more you have the one-on-one time with a mentor to get feedback from and talk about what your personal issues are, the more refined your brand will be.
Hey, great response, everybody. Okay, going back with the environment of community, I will jump into the next question. Is there any way I can find out if a certain culture or environment is best for me in the workplace? Chauncey, yes. You want to go back with? Oh, okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Chauncey.
Oh, well, yeah, I was going to say, and I actually wish I had thought about this one. I looked this one up. The opportunity to visit a desired workplace or desired industry, to spend a day or some hours actually in the presence of your colleagues or potential colleagues, can show you a lot of things. A lot of times there are corporate cafeterias, or I'm not sure in the post-COVID world how much of this is still a thing. But if you could spend time observing someone and talking to people who are a part of a community and getting their feedback and asking questions. And also some of those conversations can also happen virtually. There are spaces online where you can Google your company and hear feedback from employees, former employees, where they will give their honest opinions about what kind of jobs they had, what kind of experiences they had, what they liked about it, what they'd change about it. Those are some of my thoughts.
And what I would add to that is knowing what culture you want. So know yourself and know what you appreciate, because when you asked the question earlier about are there negative cultures, you know, at first I say yes, but really culture really depends on what you want and what you need. What I find valuable may be different than what you find valuable. So first know what you're looking for and what type of environment you want. And then I think, like Chauncey said, there's plenty of material online, talking to people that will share what the culture is at that particular place you're looking to work at.
Yeah. I would add that, you know, on the flip side of everything that I've heard just then is that you can do the research, you can read comments that people post online and different things like that. But if you are truly interested in working at a company, please apply and go and work. And the reason I say you have to be cautious on what people post online is because you have disgruntled employees that will post negative feedback, but it's not directly a perception or observation of the entire company. It's just that this employee had a bad boss. And most people will leave a bad boss over a company, you know? So a lot of times you just have to realize that you have to read the comments, but then you have to make your own decision. Because it still could be a good place to work, but at the same time, some people had some negative experiences there. So they're trying to ruin it for someone else or ruin the brand of the company from attracting additional employees.
Awesome. Thank you, Rodney, for that great response. I completely agree with you just have to go and see for yourself, because when I first started working at Floor and Decor, you know, they had some bad reviews on the management and everything working there. But like you said, you will never know unless you actually go apply and work there yourself to see. And all my coworkers turn out great. I have a great family connection with them. I haven't had any bad interactions with them thus far. So I completely agree with that, coming from my own personal experience with that.
And then honestly, if you are early in your career, your first job is like your hardest job to get. So I don't really know if you can, you know, be selective in company culture, because you got to get experience. Once you get experience, you can then start to look at other companies and start to do your due diligence to say, is this a company I'm really interested in working in? Is it going to give me the work-life balance that I'm looking for? But when you're coming out of college, you got to get that first job. So you may go into a company that has a negative culture. It's okay. Go there, get your experience, and then move on. And that's what it's about.
Right. Completely agree with that. All right, moving on to the next question. Let me better phrase this. What are you all's thoughts on code switching?
Miss Mason, you smiling. So
You smiling too, Rodney. I knew y'all was gonna try to defer to the ladies.
Gotta have variety.
I will start us off on this one. So code switching. So what do I think about it? I think it's real. That's the first thing I'll say, is that it's real. And to me, when I think about it, I try not to think about it negatively, although there can be a negative undertone, but it's about knowing your audience. And so code switching in corporate America, it's real. It happens. Have I done it? Absolutely, yes. And going back to what Rodney was saying, that it is a game and you have to figure out how to play the game. So if that means that you have to change certain mannerisms, your dialect or something like that to get where you need to be, or to be effective, then that is part of it. Now, I will say that it is a choice. And so with choices come consequences, whether they're good consequences or negative consequences. So my thoughts on it is that it's real. It definitely does happen, and there is a place for it. And again, it doesn't have to be all negative. It's about knowing your audience. And so I give the example of how I behave at my in-laws' house is different than how I hang when I'm with my brothers and sisters. Okay? Doesn't mean that they don't love me, they accept me, but they may not can take all of me. You know what I'm saying? So I may have to tone it down or say something different when I'm talking to my mother-in-law versus my sister. That's still code switching.
Right.
So that's my thought.
Great response, Ms. Mason. I knew you would knock that one out of the park for us. There's nothing wrong with it, to be honest with you. I mean, don't compromise who you are. Everybody has core values that, you know, they hold, you know, close to themselves to say, hey, this is who I am. But at the same time, corporate America is corporate America. And, you know, be who you are. Oftentimes people reach out to me and they say, you know, I have an interview with this company. What should I, or how should I prepare? And I tell them, be yourself, you know, and because you don't want to sell them on being someone else. And then once you start, you revert back to being yourself. And they're like, well, this is not the person we hired, you know, so be yourself, but there's nothing wrong with code switching. At the end of the day, you want to be successful, set your career path, and whatever you got to do to get to your ultimate goal without compromising your core values. Think about it as being a success.
Chauncey, you have anything?
Only thing I wanted to add is I found a term, strategic code switching, which I really like. I think, at least for African Americans, there's no question we have to code switch. And we do it everywhere else. So why wouldn't we do it at our workplace, right?
Right.
But strategic code switching, I think, is important because there is a mental health piece to this, as Rodney alluded to. You have to make sure that you are comfortable enough to be that you presented all the time. And not every environment is a healthy environment for you to be you in, and that's okay. But also, as Rodney alluded to, if you're just out of college and you have loans coming due, you don't get to be as picky as someone else who's built up a nest egg and has time to go hunting. So there's reality that happens all the time. But you still can be healthy. And what I would recommend, as I mentioned earlier, is you can find a space. If you have a mentor, if you're a member of the Black Professionals Organization in your industry, you can create spaces where you can be more your authentic self and vent about things that happen that you're not okay with, but you create those spaces and manage those spaces where it doesn't cost you anything. But I have to caution you this too. Be careful about thinking that everybody in the company that looks like you is supporting you. I have been in many situations where I thought I was at a safe space, and it turns out that what I said was reported back to the people I was talking about, unbeknownst to me, just because, you know, to your values, just because you wouldn't do something, you can't put it past anybody else. So I would recommend that if you've got a critique about your company, particularly your boss, your supervisor, your coworkers, keep that either to yourself or in a space under lock and key where that thing will not come back and bite you. And I will say, even outside of your company, if you're working and living in a city anything like Huntsville, professional Black people know everybody. Everybody knows everybody. So be careful even in your safe space and how you talk. And I would say, just expect that whatever you say, if you put somebody's name on it, it's gonna eventually travel and get back around to where you may not want it. So talk about people the way you would want them to talk about you, even if you critique them. Don't just say all of the 12 negative things. Mix it up. Be truthful. There are things that you like about everything, and there are things you don't like, and that's okay. But just be careful. Be careful, and particularly social media. I've seen things on social media where people, I don't know why they think they can just come home and just start typing. That's like the very worst thing you can do, because those words are recorded in eternity.
Yes.
You could be the subject of lawsuits because of what you shared. It doesn't make any sense. I'm an attorney, so I'm gonna be thinking about liability, right? So just be careful. Be careful.
Thank you, Chauncey. I couldn't have said any better. Going off with that and everything, I have a lot of coworkers who are my age or around my age as well. And a lot of times they always say, like, Shaqueria, you don't ever like go out and party, you don't ever like go out and like just joke around and everything. I'm like, I do. But as I always grew up with, when my grandma always used to tell me, there's a time for play and there's also a time for work. So once I'm at work, I'm there to get what I need to get done, gain my experience, and go home. If I need to party and things like that, I'll do that on the weekends and everything. But then again, it's a way, like Barbara was saying, there's a way you'll carry yourself at home. There's a way you'll carry yourself around your brothers, sisters, your boyfriend, your mom, uncle, auntie, anybody. There's always a way that you carry yourself there, and there's always a way you carry yourself at work. So great responses. Piggybacking off of that question, this is one of my favorite ones I've been waiting for to ask. Is wearing my hair a certain way still not considered professional? And a good example I can give is my hair right now. So Barbara, do you want to?
Ms. Mason?
No, we're gonna let the men go first.
I can start on this. There actually is a new study that just came out 3-4 weeks ago. It's reported in CNN, hasn't been published yet. Duke School of Business has a new study, August, I want to say 17th or something. And in lieu of George Floyd and all that we know is known and shared, has anything changed about the majority's opinion about African-American hair, particularly African-American women, because that's often the topic? The answer is no. No, nothing has changed in large part, in generally speaking, nothing has changed. But the caveat to this is it depends on your industry. There are some industries that are considered conservative culture. And they, like I said, these standards of beauty, they don't come from an African-American aesthetic, right? We know this. They come from a European aesthetic, right? The standard of beauty is white women, white straight hair, and that's what they consider to be professional. And they actually did an experiment where they had the same Black woman evaluated with different hairstyles. And when she had her hair in an African aesthetic, she was not considered professional, and she was not considered worthy, competent. The term they used is competent. Now, what in the world hair has to do with competency, we don't have time to discuss. But here again, we are not creating culture. We are living in culture. It's important to accept that reality, right? Same woman with straight hair gets promoted, gets the interview, gets the position. It's not fair, it's not right, but it's reality. And they say nothing has changed in large part since all of this happened. So I wasn't surprised, I wasn't shocked. I was hopeful that something had moved, but apparently the needle has not moved. But again, as far as the research from Duke shows, it depends, because this particular incident they looked at first was a management consulting position, which was considered conservative culture, and the standards of what was acceptable as professional was very rigid and very white, very European. On the other hand, the other space, the other industry was, I think it was interior design or some type of creative art, advertising, marketing, right? Almost the exact opposite rules apply over there than in the management consulting, for obvious reasons, because if someone hires you, they're hiring your culture and your insight to influence the projects and the presentations of the projects, right? Makes a lot of sense if you think about it. So that's what I have to report.
Well said, Chauncey. I just have to agree with everything that you said. I mean, I think it comes back to the first question about company culture. I think it's just for the individual African Americans, females that are working at a company to kind of understand what that culture is. I really do. I hate it. That's what is observed and can sometimes hold you back for how you wear your hair. But at the same time, I will throw something out for the males that's on the call as well. I've been told that, you know, as you're moving up the corporate ladder, if you're looking to get into a high level position, that having a beard is not acceptable. you know, so I've read that actually as well. And if you look at a lot of organizations and some of their top leaders, you will notice that, yeah, they don't have beards. So it's the same concept that we are sometimes, you know, judged by as well, is that here goes African-American male with a beard, here goes a Caucasian without a beard. That Caucasian without a beard is more attractive. Everything else is equal across the board, but it's just that, you know, perception and I don't know why, haven't done any studies on it, but this is just what I've been told. So it comes back to company culture. And I think Chauncey said it best. It's the industry that you're in. If you're in the marketing industry and they hired you to sell a brand or promote a brand that, you know, it's cool to have a beard, it's cool to have hair, like you want to wear your hair or braids or whatever it may be, they're going to support that. But if you're in a traditional conservative corporate America company that, you know, you're not in a marketing role, it could be looked at as a negative.
I completely agree with both of what they said. The only thing that I would add is, again, know what kind of culture you're looking for. Know that you are not going to change the culture. So do not think you're going to go in there and make a stand and say, nope, you're going to accept me with my hair this way, if that's not the culture. Because culture is formed over years. And like Chauncey was saying, sometimes it's not at your location, it has a history to it. And so be aware of the kind of culture you're looking for and align yourself with those cultures, is the best thing that I can say. But it's a sad reality that it does exist, but that's what we're dealing with.
Thank you, Ms. Mason. Those were all great responses. All right, moving on to our next question. How do I know if I need to wear a business attire to an interview? Or let's just say, how do I know if there's a such thing as overdressing for an interview?
I'll take that, I guess, to start. If you have an interview, dress up for the interview. There's no such thing, in my opinion, of being overdressed, because if you walk in there with a suit and tie on and everybody else in there is a little bit less casual than what you are, that's fine. You can take your tie off, you know, to accommodate the setting in the room. But I will tell you, African Americans are always held to a higher standard when it comes to our appearance. So with that being said, if you have an interview, dress up for the interview. I know that there are trends out there that a lot of companies are saying, oh, you can come in very casual. You know, I've heard about, you know, like Google and Amazon and different companies like that will say, hey, you can come in a t-shirt and shorts and stuff like that. That's fine. But if you get an interview with Google or Amazon, put a business suit on.
And the only thing that I agree with what he's saying, that it's hard to overdress. Here is an example that I will give. So in some of my career, I worked in distribution centers. And so I remember a particular interview where I had to interview in the distribution center, and there was going to be a tour afterwards. So normally at this point in my career, when I was interviewing, I would wear a skirt suit. But for this particular interview, I wore a pantsuit, because I knew I would be in the plant. I knew that I would be walking across grading. And if you've been in a warehouse, if you're walking in an elevated space across grading, you don't want to have on a skirt because people are below you. Okay, so I knew the environment that I was going to be in. And instead of wearing the normal heels I would wear, I chose a different shoe because, again, I was going to be taking a walk in the plant. So that's certainly not overdressing, but you do need to be aware of where you're interviewing and what the situation is. And I usually say, you know, dress for the position that you're interviewing for. So when I was in that warehouse, I was interviewing to be the HR manager of that facility. That attire was all jeans and button downs for managers. Well, as the HR person, I never came in jeans, but I didn't come in a suit once I got the job, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Thank you, Ms. Mason. I believe Tori came across a good point in the chat. I'll read. It seems as though the scope of commentary seems to be how do we adequately integrate ourselves into the institutions of others versus creating our own, let's just say creating our own like environment for us as African Americans. Like how can we go about that? I feel like that's a great point Tori brought up. And does anyone have anything to say on that point?
Yeah, I will. No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just I can look at the chat. No, go ahead, Ms. Mason. That's fine. I'm looking at the question.
If I understand the question, Tori, I think maybe what you're saying is we're talking about how to fit within the confines of the corporate culture versus talking about how do we create our own. So I hope that's the question. Yes. And so I'll give you my honest opinion is that to me, that's called entrepreneurship. I'm just gonna be honest. Because I say that you are not very likely going to go in and change a company's culture that is not your own company. You can assimilate, you can integrate into that culture, you can find safe spaces, like Chauncey said, to be authentically who you are, but to think that you are going to do a 360-degree turn of a culture, I don't think it is possible. That's my opinion from working in corporate America for 20 years, because culture is formed over time. So also think about it from a personal standpoint. When you think about your family, we call it sometimes tradition. If I am, let's say when I married my husband and my family always did Thanksgiving a certain way, do you think I'm going to come into his family and say, no, it should be done this way? So tradition and culture are very similar. They've been doing that for 50 years. I'm not going to come in and change it. Now, they may say, okay, well, we don't do it on Friday. You can do it on Thursday or whatever, but I'm not going to change the culture, me as an individual, on a dime. So that's my opinion on that.
I have to jump in now. It's really funny because someone followed up with, do we recommend disrupting corporate culture? I have so much experience. I laugh because usually when I decide it's time to disrupt corporate culture, one of two things has happened. Either the department that I'm working in is doing so poorly that the traditionalists who run the institution are willing to risk whatever comes with changing culture, which means a lot of people who have been patrons up until that point will no longer be patrons in the hope that there's a larger crop on the other side of the boat. That has happened, and that has gone really, really well for me. And I love those opportunities. But that particular organization was only 15 years old, and they were anxious, and they were entrepreneurial in spirit, and they weren't intimidated by me at the time. However, once I found success and there were more fish on the other side of the boat, then people started getting in their feelings about, do we really want someone who's not originally a part of us to have this kind of weight or power or influence, right? And so there was a come to Jesus meeting where I was told, okay, thank you for giving us this great example. Now we need you to choose whether or not you can fit in or get out, right? This is almost a civil rights issue. And because I'm a civil rights guy, I took a stand and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get out, right? I came, this was what I wanted to bring to you. I showed you something you'd never seen before. Thank you for the memories. And I had to get out. So you need to appreciate the fact that most of the time, 9 times out of 10, you have to figure out how to fit into culture. If you want to create culture, that is exactly the entrepreneurial spirit that some startup companies are looking for.
Yes, that's true.
But there's a whole other set of things. You need to know that 3 out of 4 startups don't live long, right? It's a risky experiment, which you may be up for, but you need to know there are all kinds of trade-offs for all of these things. So you will sacrifice some money, but you will gain in creativity, right? So you just need to bear those things in mind.
Thank you, Chauncey. Does anyone else have anything to add?
Let me, I see the post right after about disrupting culture and how would you recommend that approach? So can you disrupt culture? Yes, you can. I have disrupted culture many a times. And so I think you have to evaluate where you are in your career, what risk you're willing to take, what hill are you gonna die on, and what are you disrupting, and what is the purpose? So early on in my career, I was less disruptive. I got real disruptive when I knew I was going to leave. So again, that was me, because I had calculated the cost. I was at a high enough position that I knew I had the influence to be way more disruptive, but I knew that there was a consequence to doing such. But I had a backup plan, so it didn't matter. And so I think that you have to be strategic. Don't fight to fight. Die on a hill that you're willing to die on, but be willing to accept the risk that may come with it. So that's what I would say.
All right, thank you, Ms. Mason. Okay, so sticking with corporate culture, that moves to our next question. Where do entrepreneurs will fit in with corporate culture? Or where do you guys think where entrepreneurs would fit into that category with corporate culture?
I mean, I think there are several areas that entrepreneurs can fit into a corporate culture. I mean, you have marketing, which I think you have to be creative in that area. You have business development, you know, and if you're going to be an entrepreneur, it's all about building your business. And so maybe go work in a business development part of an organization for 3 to 5 years, understand how to attract new business, and then break out and do your own thing. So I think you can fit in, but I just think you need to have your end game understood, because if you're a true entrepreneur, you're probably not going to stay in corporate America long, because they're going to cap your creativity and being able to do things that you prefer to do, where it's going to be more restricted in corporate America versus if you're out on your own. So, I mean, I think you should definitely start if you are a young entrepreneur and you have an opportunity to go work in an organization, in a position that you feel like is going to help you in what you're trying to do on your own.
Okay, Chauncey, do you have anything to add with that?
I kind of dipped into this question in my last answer as it relates to new organizations, startup organizations.
Right.
So I think I've said my part on this.
Okay, awesome. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to read the comments, what Tori said. Okay, thank you, Tori. I completely agree with that as well. So moving on to our next question, what skills would you recommend when resolving a workspace conflict? Or is there ever a time where it's best that you could avoid a conflict within the workplace? Or should it always be dealt with or embraced in that setting or outside that setting?
I think some skills to deal with workplace conflict is to always seek to understand before seeking to be understood. So listening and trying to find a way to compromise. I think that's really important when it comes to conflict, because in a compromise situation, then both parties kind of get a piece of what they want. But first you have to listen and try to see where the other person is coming from. Don't assume evil or deceit at the jump, unless they've given you a reason to approach it that way. But if you're new in your career or it's a new situation, try to understand where that other person is coming from first, and then see if you can compromise or, you know, have some patience and all of that. In terms of should it be always embraced, I would say, in my personal opinion, there's only a couple of battles I'm gonna fight. I mean, so choose your battles carefully. You don't want to be perceived as the troublemaker. You don't want to be perceived as the person who always has a challenging argument or who always is stirring up conflict. And I think Rodney said it, is always think about what your end goal is. So you have to be very strategic in your career. And so is this something to get all up in arms about, or is it a preference? Or is it something that goes against your core values? And so be strategic about the things that you get involved and engaged in, and just limit your time in that space would be my opinion.
Okay, Rodney, do you have anything for us?
No, I think for the most part, Miss Mason covered it. I mean, I think just pick your battles. Not every battle that, you come across is worth, engaging in conflict. And I think I've had to learn this myself, and I think listening is key. Because whenever you're in a, potential situation that could lead to conflict, oftentimes when we are engaging in conversation, we're already formulating our response and really not listening to the individual that's giving us feedback. So oftentimes, we will allow things to escalate from there because we're really not listening. So I would say, if you're entering your career now, to just listen, pick your battles, and for the most part, honestly, try to avoid conflict if at all possible. I know that that's not going to always be the case, but just try to be a good team player, and you can stand up for yourself when you feel like somebody has disrespected you or something like that. But at the same time, just try to fit in and be a good teammate.
I love this question, and I love the responses that have been shared so far. I don't have much to add, but my key point as it relates to conflict is I believe conflict comes in order to help you grow and become a better person. And I think if you think of conflict that way, you will allow your work to be more internal than external. You will never have a job that does not have conflict. You will never be able to find this perfect situation that's going to meet every criteria, even when you have your own business. So you need to just be aware that sometimes this conflict is an opportunity for you to choose who you are and what you stand for. But be careful. My initial thought on this was exactly what Rodney just said. If at all possible, avoid all conflict. To the extent that you are going to engage with conflict, I think the idea is to put the emphasis on how that conflict has come to make you a better person and a better team player.
Okay, I think we have another question that just popped up in the chat. How do you manage being in a new career meeting company metrics by higher leadership? However, your immediate manager has a dictator spirit and pushes the boundaries of EEOC laws.
I need to go look at that. It's in the chat.
Yes. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sorry if I pronounced it wrong. Corolla?
I'm not sure I understand the question. If they can maybe give some more specifics.
I'm sorry, guys. It's Corolla. I just started a career in the technology sector. And when I say pushes the laws and boundaries, like no breaks and you've worked a 6-hour shift, or just completely just a dictator, micromanage at its finest when it's not needed in tech, because your metrics and anybody can look on the back end with privileges and see what you've done, when you've done it, what you did, everything. So I'm constantly getting positive feedback from upper leadership, but my immediate supervisor, and it's not just me, all of us feel oppressed.
Yeah. honestly, that immediate supervisor could be concerned for his or her own position because you guys are doing an excellent job. And oftentimes, when you have supervisors that are micromanagers or they want to control their team, they want to make it seem like they're the strongest link of the team. You know what I mean? And so I think you guys just have to continue to perform at the highest level, and the individuals above your supervisor, um, they observe your guys' performance. And so there's going to come a time and place where that supervisor is going to have to, I feel like he's going to, he or she is going to probably leave, to be honest with you, because it depends on how they're thought of at the higher management level. So it's tricky, but my immediate feedback would be to continue to perform. And if you feel like you are continuing to be oppressed, I don't know where you're at in your career, but there are a lot of other organizations out there that I'm sure will be happy to have you.
Thank you very much for your answer.
The other thing I would say is, again, depending on the culture of your company and how your HR department is, that's always should be a safe place to go to talk. If not, look and see if your company has an employee hotline or where you can be anonymous if you don't feel like you can be show who you are, so you can use that method or approach. Then obviously there's always outside things that you can do if you feel like it's that bad. But I would just caution you on doing that and make sure that you have all your ducks in a row. And typically before you go to an outside agency like the EEOC or a lawyer, you want to make sure that you follow the chain of command within your organization. So those are the things that I would say.
Well, I have, as well as, just not talking to many peers because, I have to cover me personally. I feel like I have to cover me. People may come and vent to me about their particular issues, but I don't vent.
Right.
So I cover myself. I keep emails and documentation, including chat. And I've been pushing for it, but it's kind of getting to be overwhelming at this point.
You can always start looking for another job, and you should be doing that anyway. Always have your resume updated.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right. For our next question, as someone who is new to teleworking from home, what advice would you give for anyone maintaining the work-life balance during quarantine?
I would say set a schedule, set a defined schedule, because it's easy to actually work more hours working from home than what you would if you were driving into the office, because you don't have that daily commute anymore. So just schedule breaks, make sure you take a lunch, and just schedule a end time for your day to conclude. And so you can, enjoy your family or enjoy anything else that you have that you enjoy to do, actually. So it's just, it's going to have to be up to you as the individual, because the company is not going to govern that. They'll let you work as much as you want to. They're not going to say anything. So I think you just have to be intentional to say, I'm going to shut down at 5 p.m. today. I'm not going to check any more emails until 8 a.m. tomorrow.
Thank you, Rodney. Chauncey, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say space management is important here. To have an allocated space where you do your work. The idea is to boundaries. Sometimes in this case, you have to create physical boundaries so that you can keep your life separate from your work. It'd be great if you could have a place where you work that you don't go in if you're not working. I've read recently, sometimes it may even be good to separate your devices and have work devices that you use and life devices that you use. The more you can separate, I read also, just like you take a lunch break and you usually get up and you go somewhere, get up and go somewhere, go get you some food, walk at lunchtime. When you get done with break, when you get done with your workday, even normally you go get in your car and you drive home. You need to come up with routines and strategies and rituals like that. Stop, pack up everything, put it in a case, walk out of your place, your house, walk around, go somewhere for a couple of minutes, do something fun, drink a glass of wine, call the day off, right? And maintain that. And of course, like Rodney said, don't spend the rest of the evening checking emails and following up and going back to. It's critical. It's a mental health issue. And a lot of people are not navigating this well. There's a level of depression that is going on right now that no one's really talking about. But even those of us who are gainfully employed, we are struggling to create boundaries, not only for work, but for life. And then again, I think, I mentioned it earlier, having someone who you talk to that is not connected to your work, to just bounce things off, how you're feeling, how you're dealing. That stuff, some of that stuff you need to actually say. And if you don't find anybody you can talk to yourself. Have a whole full conversation. Get this stuff off your chest, because if you go down, they'll replace you in 30 seconds. So you are not expendable at your job. You're replaceable, and you need to act like it.
Ms. Mason, do you have anything for us?
No. I agree with everything they said.
Okay. Going off your comment, Cedric, in the chat, I completely agree with how you go about your day when working from home. I remember when COVID first started and we had just recently got out of school for spring break, and then we just never came back, like I said earlier in the discussion. And I remember at my old apartment I used to stay in before I moved and everything, after I got done with school, I could not sit in my bedroom at all and do none of my schoolwork. Once we had to turn completely remotely, I had to get away, because I play video games and everything as well. I had to completely stray myself away from that, because I knew I would not be able to get anything done if I stayed in my room. And then when it came time for where we normally take lunch, or I normally have a break, I would just go either just walk around my apartment complex, or I would just, I would just like contact my classmates and call them and ask them about anything with work or anything. And then I still had my schedule set to where I would work in the evening. So by the time where it was time for me to go to work, I would completely get everything I need to get done before the time I had to go to work. So by the time I got off of work, I would come home and just could completely relax and just didn't have to worry about nothing piggybacking on my shoulder that I had to worry about until the next day I had to start all over again. So that was very good, Cedric, that you said that and everything. It just brought up a good point for me.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
All right, so moving on with our next question. How does a professional maintain a positive attitude during team assignments when a team member is performing badly, missing deadlines, or slacking off at work? Anything or all the above?
I think, to me, you do it. You have a positive attitude. Again, it kind of goes back to that conversation of what battles are you going to fight. So, documentation is always good. Do your job to the best of your ability. Communicate with your leader, either about the situation, if that's a safe space. If it's not, communicate to your leader about what you're doing. And what I've generally found out is that you reap what you sow. It'll eventually will be apparent and will come out. But just have a positive attitude. And again, I try to use personal examples to help us see how to perform at work. Think about, in your own family. If your family is like mine, you're planning a family reunion, there's always somebody who didn't do their part. They didn't pay their $20. They didn't, get on the call like they said they would. There's always somebody slacking, and so what do you do with them? You just, okay, that's who they are, move on and just keep a positive attitude. But don't let it disrupt what you're doing or take away from the quality of your work.
Completely agree. All right. Anybody else have anything to add to Ms. Mason's?
She covered it.
Yeah, I can say it better myself because there's a lot of times where I have a coworker, anybody who's in like a different department than where I am in my workplace, and I see that they're slacking off. Then again, I'm not the boss to sit there and tell them like, hey, you need to go and do this, you need to go do that and everything. As long as, like Ms. Mason said, as long as I get done what I need to get done at the end of the day, that's what I need to worry about, because then it's my job to do what I need to get done. And it's not my job to worry about others. I mean, you can give your advice and everything all day, but at the end of the day, you have to worry about yourself and what you need to get going for yourself to be successful. Okay, winding down to my last question I have. My coworker is a hoarder. How can I motivate her to clean her workspace without making her feel attacked and lowering her morals?
Oh, wow. I don't, how can you, I would probably say something as simple as, maybe start to clean your space. And maybe just, as you're cleaning your space, if that coworker is present at his or her desk, to maybe just say, hey, sometimes you just do stuff and you start to do stuff and individuals will realize that, oh, my desk area is dirty too. Let me clean it up as well. If that doesn't work, I mean, you can potentially go to like an assistant, like an executive assistant or an assistant for that department and say, hey, can you maybe send out a general email, to have people clean up their workspace. That's something that people do from time to time. If that doesn't work, honestly, you may just need to have a one-on-one conversation and just, say, hey, I like to keep my workspace, clean, and I'm noticing that you haven't had an opportunity to clean your workspace in a while. Would you mind maybe cleaning up a little bit? And it's all about the approach. And as long as it's not, confrontational or anything like that, it should be well received, I think. People are just busy a lot of times at their job, and they just don't take time to clean their desk. And over time, it does get dirty. But if they're like me, when I was in the company or going to the office every day, I was never at my desk. I was always in meetings. So I didn't, take pride necessarily in having a clean work area because I just felt like it was a storage location for me while I was there.
Great point. Anyone else has anything to add to Rodney? All right, I would say piggybacking off of your response, Rodney, I completely agree with that. I don't personally have like my own personal desk, so I can't really say much on that standpoint, how it is working in an actual office. But I know for myself, I believe I'm a very organized person versus someone who may not always be as organized as I am. So I know I've had one coworker say one time that if her station is like completely neat, she cannot get anything done or cannot find anything, which could be true in a way and everything. But like you said, it's all the way about how you approach the person and how you like approach the situation to make it where you're just not going off and telling them like, hey, your desk is messy, you need to clean it up. Like not being a mom to somebody, because I mean, you're at work, nobody really wants you to be, the mom or anything to them except the boss or whoever's your supervisor over you and everything. So great point.
Hey, Shaqueria, we have a few additional questions that didn't make your list from people who registered after we sent the list out. So one of the questions was, what is the best way to leverage your current certifications when you are facing companies with little to no experience?
What was the question again, Jason? I didn't catch the first part of it.
That's no problem. What is the best way to leverage your current certifications when you are facing companies with little to no experience?
Wow. Great question, and I will probably take a stab at that. I have a few certifications, and I will use my PMP certification as an example. I went out and I got the PMP before I actually started practicing as being a project manager. And the reason being is because I wanted to show the company that I was serious about being a project manager. So getting that certification assisted me with doing that. But it's difficult, it's challenging. So what you have to do, if you are fortunate to land an interview, is to look at everything that the role requires. And so if your certification is one of the things that it requires, great. But if you don't have job experience to be able to speak directly to what they're asking for, maybe find something in your background that aligns with what they're looking to do. And just, it's all about selling yourself in these interviews. A lot of times these job descriptions are put together and you don't necessarily have to check the box for everything in the job description, but you have to be prepared in the interview and be prepared to sell yourself. And so you can get individuals to take a chance on you just because you had a great interview. You know, you can come in and be taught or learn how to do anything. They just, you know, and most interviews nowadays that I'm in, it's really more about the cultural fit than the actual experience of the person that has, you know, has done this before in the past. If they fit the culture and they're a good teammate, individuals will 9 times out of 10 get an opportunity.
The other thing I would add is going back to your professional network is align yourself and have networks with people of the kinds of jobs that you want. So for example, in Rodney's case, if he was trying to be a project manager, then in his network, he should have some project managers so they can speak highly of you, give you an heads up when there's a posting that may not be posted. So that's a way to kind of get your foot in the door. And then from the interview, you can kind of carry yourself the way that he said. The other thing is to be a student of your craft. And so know your industry intimately. So whatever your certification is in, you may not have the physical work experience, but know how it's trending, know how it's being used so that you can talk intelligently. So if they ask you a question about, tell me about a time that you did X and you don't have the work experience, you can say, hey, I have not done that. But what I do know is that the trend of this, you know, blah, 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 is going here. So I would approach it this way. So you'll have some subject knowledge that you can share if you don't have the actual work experience.
All right, and we have one additional question before we start wrapping it up. How does one stick out to get more recognition for their hard work, and how to utilize this to move up, I guess, upward mobility? How to utilize, how does one stick out to get more recognition for their hard work, and how to utilize that recognition to, I guess, level up? Anybody?
Okay, I'll jump in there. So in terms of how to be recognized is to do really, really good work. The other thing is know your business. So know how your company makes money and know what value you bring that goes to the bottom line. And so a lot of people will just come in head down and just do their job. That's important, but you need to know how your piece ties to the bigger puzzle and be able to communicate your value. And so that looks like, you know, where the company is trending, you know what's on the horizon. You're raising your hand for the projects, you're raising your hand for the stuff that nobody wants to do. And you can talk about how what you do impacts the bottom line. So do really good work, show your value, and be able to communicate your value.
I was going to add, if I may, network with those people who are being recognized and promoted. I think it's important to celebrate the success of your colleagues, even when it's not about you. Recognition isn't something that you should ever solicit. It should just come naturally. but some of us don't do well with recognition. So you have to be generous and gracious, but no one will know that about you necessarily until you engage with them about their success. And you may ask them, you know, what made them think to do this, or what does it feel like to have done this? And you put yourself in a network, in a group, put yourself an opportunity for someone to see your personality and your character separate and apart from what it is you do every day. And eventually, to Barbara's point, if your work is of a nature that it deserves recognition, recognition will come one way or another. But you have to be really, really careful that you don't walk around waiting for people to celebrate you. That is not generally looked upon very well in a large organization.
Was there any other questions, Jason? That was the last one.
Oh, that was the last one.
Okay, awesome. All right. So I have enjoyed you all with the form and everything, talking to you all and anything. Does anyone have any last comments, questions, remarks?
No, thank you. Thank you very much. This was, I enjoyed it as well, and hopefully something that we've shared this evening will resonate with our attendees. And I think we've all posted our contact information in the chat. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions or concerns about anything.
All right, thank you, Rodney. All right, Chauncey, Ms. Mason, you have any additional remarks?
Thank you for allowing me to be here. And I'm with Rodney. Hopefully something that we said resonated with those that came.
Amen. Thank you, guys. This was awesome. Great questions.
All right. All right, do I turn it back over to Jason or?
Shaqueria, I'll take over.
Okay.
I thank you all again for your attendance tonight. This was an awesome session. I really enjoyed it. I took some great notes. Just to reiterate some of the points that were made when it comes to the language of the company, learning the company's culture. Mr. Driver said corporate America is a game. Yes, it is. You have to learn to play. And Mr. McGlathery said you have to understand where your office falls in the hierarchy of the actual company as a whole so that you will know where you fit. Moving on to whether there's a negative or a positive of corporate culture, I agree. There really isn't any negativity when it comes to trying to figure out a company's culture. You just have to know if you fit in. So that goes into when we talked about basically how to get advice on internships. That goes into branding yourself, networking, creating LinkedIn accounts, and getting a mentor to help lead you. And mentorship doesn't just surround itself around your professional life. It also can help you with your personal life as well. Visiting a company, researching to make sure that culture fits in with what your goal is, what you want to do eventually in your future is important. Y'all, I took like some really good notes. Seriously, you guys gave really good advice, especially on code switching. Yes, code switching is real. Again, learn to play the game. And strategic code switching. I think Mr. McGlathery Was that you who talked about strategic code switching? Talk to people the way you would want to be talked to, or talk about people the way you would want to be talked about. Yeah. And hair, oh my gosh, wasn't there a court case going on regarding African American women's hair, and they ruled that basically you cannot wear your hair in its natural state when you're working in corporate America. They ruled against it. Now, did they go back and retract that? Do you guys know?
I'm not sure. I know it's one on dreadlocks as well. That was really
Okay.
good.
Okay, maybe that's the one that I'm thinking about, the dreadlocks. Yeah. And moving on to interviewing, how to dress. You cannot overdress. I agree. But ladies, do not walk into that interview with stripper heels on. You only need about this much of a heel. It doesn't look cute.
Short skirts as well.
Oh yes, actually, your skirt does not need to be above your knee. It needs to stop right there, on your knees. The advice that you guys gave with creating your own company versus conforming. If you're hard at conforming, you need to just go into entrepreneurship, open up your own business. However, there may be a point where you're able to make some changes within the company if it's a startup company. Isn't that right, Mr. McGlathery? Is that what you said? If it's a startup company, you may have a little wiggle room, but just as soon as you get comfortable, they're gonna put you in your place, right? Workplace conflict. Try to understand, I think this is Ms. Davis. She said, understand before trying to be understood. Is that what you said? Ms. Mason.
Seek to understand before seeking to be understood.
Understood. Yeah, I love that statement. I had to write that down. Choose your battles carefully. You know, what battles are you going to fight? Does this align with what you want to be in the future? You know, lead by example. Work-life balance. I struggle with that a lot. I've been working more hours from home than I did in the actual office. So setting a schedule, I didn't have a schedule set. My coworkers would email me at 8 o'clock at night. And what I'm doing, I'm looking at the email, trying to fix software issues and respond to their emails and space management. I do have that down pat, as you can see. This is my office. I do not work in any other part of my house. I feel like I live in this room now. But yeah, thank you guys so much. I just wanted to reiterate some of those points that you guys made. Again, it was great. I loved it all.
Hey, Shaqueria, real quick. Sorry to interrupt, but I just posted a book that I would recommend as a good read, Empowering Yourself, The Organizational Game Revealed by Harvey J. Coleman. It talks about a lot of the things that I've shared today or this evening about the game in corporate America and kind of how to play the game. So it's a good read that I would highly recommend for anybody that's, you know, starting in their career or have already been in their career for a number of years.
What's the name of it again?
It's called Empowering Yourself, The Organizational Game Revealed by Harvey J. Coleman. And I put it in the chat as well, so I don't know if it's visible, but just so you guys are aware of it.
All right, thank you, Rodney, for that. I definitely will check that out.
Yeah, thank you so much. Just a couple of announcements. Well, not a couple, just one more. LU105, we will have that event on October 29th. So be looking out on Eventbrite for that posting. During LU105, we will be discussing interview strategies, face-to-face versus virtual interviews. If you like tonight, you would definitely like LU105 as well. And I will now pass the mic to our president, Mr. Bradshaw, to close out.
All right, thank you, Brittany. First off, I want to just thank the panelists and Shaqueria for an awesome session. I really enjoyed it. There was a lot of good insight, a lot of good tips and tricks that were provided, and it was awesome. I really enjoyed it. And but for everybody, I'm gonna put her out on blast. This was Shaqueria's first time doing something like this, and I think she did a phenomenal job.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
For everybody that's still tuned in, if you enjoyed the session, please drop a thank you for the panelists and for Shaqueria for all for the session. Brittany, I definitely appreciate you for you doing everything you do to get this going. You and the strategy team, so I appreciate everything you guys do. So I saw somebody put in the comments. They're wondering how to join BDPA. If you're not familiar with BDPA, BDPA is a Black Data Processing Associates. We are a national organization. We are spread out throughout the United States, in most major cities, including Atlanta and Nashville, Memphis, Huntsville. So if you're interested in joining and learning more about BDPA, you can always go out to bdpa.org and find out more about the organization. If you want to find out more about the Huntsville chapter, is bdpa.hsv.org, and you can find out more about everything that we have going on. So on that note, I appreciate everybody for joining in today. I appreciate my panelists and my moderator and everybody who came out tonight. Thank you. Everybody have a good night. God bless.
You too. Thank you very much.
And panelists and everybody, can y'all hang back for a minute?
Oh, okay.